Kids Convention 2018 was held November 9th and 10th at People's Church in Salem, Oregon. This is the Leaders Breakout Session featuring David Laflin.
It is awesome to be here with you guys today. We always love when we get to do things with kids, but especially with leaders. I do have to say that oftentimes when we come in and get to do trainings and things like that, it's for like an hour or 2 hours, and so we're going to kind of cram that all into 20-ish minutes. But I need you guys to try something with me if you would, please. I know you might have donuts and drinks and things like that in your hands, but you can kind of set them to the side. And if you would, you have to really listen carefully or you're going to miss it. What I need you to do first is just quietly stand to your feet. Yeah, if you would quietly stand to your feet and then listen, because this is important. You need to be able to do this, okay? As you're there, I want you to pick your left foot up so you're standing on just one foot and then put it back down. You guys are talented, that's for sure, right? We're going to try it one more time. Pick up your left foot, put it back down, pick up your left foot. Yeah, some of you guys almost fell. Don't do that. Now this time, I'll tell you what, pick up your left foot, hop up and down a couple times, put your foot back down, have a seat. I'm sure some of you are wondering why in the world we did that. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we got everything off on the right foot. Yeah. Yes, and groaning is an excellent form of audience participation, so I appreciate that. Well, we are excited that we get to be here again. My name is David. That is my wife, Tisha. And for the last about 15, 16 years, the main thing that we have done is traveled all across the nation, even overseas, and partnered with people just like you to do fun events like this or to come into a church and do a special thing and share the message of Jesus. And our specific way of doing that is through this art that we call illusions. And as we were kind of talking with Mr. Brian and just saying, hey, if we have just a few minutes, what would be best to do? His thought was, let's make it practical. And so what we wanted to do is share something specific from our experience, from the thing that we do most often, which is work with larger groups. But some of the things that you can take and apply in your ministries. We've also worked on staff at a local church, been with large churches, small churches, and there's a few different things that I think can be really effective when you're in a large group setting, no matter what size church or what size group you're with. And of course, one of those things that is most effective is prayer. So let's real quick just open up in a word of prayer and we'll dive into a few more things. Jesus, we do thank you so much that we can gather together just from all over the place, different backgrounds, all those type of things. But God, I thank you for the unity that we have and the desire to serve you and to lead kids into a closer relationship with you. And so we pray for your hand upon these next few minutes, that the right words would be said, the right questions would be asked, and that every person here would walk away just getting something specific from you. In Jesus' name, amen. A couple other quick things. My wife Tisha and I, we have 4 kids. They are 9, 7, 4, and 2. And so obviously the world of kids ministry is really, really important to us. Not just because of the research that tells us that this is when kids are getting their moral foundation. This is when they're deciding if they're going to live for Jesus. Not just because of that, but because we are living in the middle of it. And so we really value what you guys do. We know so much that as parents, we obviously have this huge role. But the role that you guys play, especially for those families that these kids don't have parents that are guiding them spiritually, is so incredible and so impactful. I really believe that what you do as a kids ministry leader is more important than probably any other job in the world. You guys really have this chance to make an eternal difference in the lives of kids. So thank you guys, first and foremost, for what you do. Let's dive into a couple quick things. I want to do a little test with you guys, if I could. It's a test because, see, one of the things we like to do is actually equip people to do these tricks and illusions. Tisha and I, a couple different things real quick. We'd love to talk to you about coming to your church. You can grab our information. We also create lessons that you can do, simple things with normal household items to kind of share the message of Jesus. But there's a test that you have to take, first of all, to see if you can do these tricks and illusions. So do you guys want to just quickly take the test? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to have to set the mic down, so I hope you can still hear me. Here's how this works. What I need you to do is go ahead and place your hands out in front of you like this. Okay, different this time. Thumbs down this time, pointing at the ground, thumbs down. Bring the backs of your hands together closer and closer and closer. Before they touch, cross them over. Lock your fingers just like that, and then look around, make sure everybody is participating. Perfect. Now here's what you have to do. First of all, try to move your pinkies without moving any other fingers. I knew it. You guys are talented. Next, move your thumbs and only your thumbs. Last part of the test, take your arms and go like this. All right, that worked better for some of you than for others. But here's the thing, the reality is, even if that did not work for you, you can still do these tricks and illusions and have a little bit of fun with them. But whether or not you use these illusions or you don't, here's a few other things that we can dive into. I think one of the key things that is really, really important when it comes to kind of preparing to be a more effective communicator of the gospel, especially in our large groups, is that it is important for us, and again, I'm going to cram an hour and a half into the next 20-ish minutes. So we'll dive through this real quick. One thing that's really, really important is with kids to remember it's okay to have fun. You see, we believe that when we have their eyes, we have their ears, and when we have their ears, we have a door to the heart. And it's so important for us to create an environment that kids say, hey, this is great, I love being a part of it, because it allows us to do something. You see, the reality is that ultimately what we want is we want their attention, right? We want them to pay attention so that they'll hear what we have to say. They'll give us their eyes, they'll give us their ears, and the message will be for their heart. Now, when it comes to attention, there's actually two kinds of attention. One is involuntary. So what that means is if somebody were to throw a rock through that window and it were to shatter and be a super loud noise, whether or not you want to turn around and pay attention, you're going to. Because it was something so startling, you just can't help but look, right? That's involuntary. But the second part is voluntary, meaning you're actually going to choose to say, I want to pay attention to this. I think there is something good in it for me. And with kids, if they're enjoying where they're at, they're much more likely to say, this is great. I want to pay attention. I want to get something out of this. Then there's also two types of attention. In addition to that, there's actually the ability to get attention, so to attain attention, but also to retain attention. It's one thing to do something fun to get their attention, but we also need to figure out how we're going to retain somebody's attention. And I want to help you guys with a few practical things that I think will be helpful with that. It's the retention of attention, the involuntary and voluntary, then the creation and retention of their interest. So here's a few things that I think are really important. I'm going to give you guys just kind of a general, real practical outline. When it comes to setting up your large group setting, I think no matter what size your church is, no matter what size your group is, you can apply these principles, and it's going to help you create this different level of interest and retain the attention of these kids so they'll hear the message. One of the things is to think about what's happening before things start happening. One of the things that I really love about this session, in fact, I brought over our little planning center sheet, is that Brian and the team are really intentional about what's happening inside the main sanctuary before the program starts. There is 8 minutes on here of what is happening as people are walking in. The whole idea is, what are we doing to create the right environment? So when they walk in, they're like, this is going to be cool, this is going to be fun. And so it's not typically in-depth spiritual teachings. It's, hey, we're going to have these fun announcements, we're going to play these silly games, we're going to do this kind of fun little dance, but it is creating an environment. The same thing even when you walk in here. Sometimes it can be big things, but I don't know if you noticed or not, but when you walked in, we just had music playing. Of course, this was extra fun. There's donuts in the back. There's just something in this room that tells you, hey, this is a good place to be. So make sure you think about what's happening, whether it's music or videos, as kids walk into your room. If it's just a dead, empty room, it feels like that. This is boring and uneventful, and I'm not sure I want to be here. But we can create an environment that says, this is going to be fun, this is going to be special. I also think it's important to make something happen fast. When I came up here, the real quick thing that I did is I said, hey, I want to try and experiment with you guys, so if you would, I need you to do this. And with kids, I always kind of lead this, and I say, now this is really important. I don't want you to miss it, so listen carefully. And we did something goofy where I had you all stand up. I had you hop up and down on one foot, sit down, and in some ways it just felt like that was just a silly, goofy thing. But really what it was is a way for me to real quickly gather your attention to the place that it needed to be so we could go on with what was happening. So think about how you can make just something happen fast that immediately tells people we're starting. I think often if we just start with kind of like, hey, my name is David, and here's a few things about me, that can be boring. But if I can do something fun, it allows people to draw in a little bit better. So we'll do a pre-program. We have something that happens fast. I think that's a great time to just launch into whatever your opening songs are. If you have a skit, something high energy that immediately is going to draw those kids in and say, hey, this is a great place to be. From there, we often transition into a little bit more of an introduction. Part of the reason for this is, too, you obviously are going to have some of those families that are a little bit late. And I don't want them to miss the things that I really need them to hear. So if they can walk into a room where kids are on their feet, jumping and singing and dancing, it allows us to give just that extra 5 minutes where we still started on time, but we get some of these people in. And so that way when we say, hey, we're so glad you guys are here, there's a couple quick rules that we have that are going to make this even better. And that is you got to bring coffee for everybody when you... No, but we might be able to say, hey, there's a couple quick rules that are going to make this even better, and one is we have fun. The second is if you need to leave the room, you have to talk to your leaders. The third is whatever those rules are. But we like to make something happen first to have their attention so that as we give that information, it makes even more sense. From there, we love to dive into more music, doing some things for audience participation, and then getting into that main content. So although we love to have fun, we also know that the real reason we're there is we want these people to hear the message of Jesus. But the way we kind of view it is earning the right to be heard. See, there is a reason that professional athletes, actors, celebrities get paid millions and millions of dollars to endorse things that make no sense. For example, Michael Jordan, a professional athlete endorsing Ballpark Franks. Do you really think he became a professional athlete by eating lots of hot dogs? It doesn't make any sense. But why would they pay him all this money? Because the reality is, our minds work like this. We look and say, if this person is an expert at basketball, they must know what they're talking about when they talk about hot dogs. So if Michael Jordan says Ballpark Franks are the hot dog to choose, that's what I'm going to choose. And it seems like it doesn't make any sense, but I promise you, if it didn't work, companies would not spend millions and millions of dollars to get these people to endorse things. And the same thing kind of happens with us. If kids see that you're enjoying what you're doing, that you are prepared, which I think is so important, if you have not prepared your lesson, kids recognize that. And they will realize, if this wasn't important enough for you to think about and prepare, why is it important enough for me to listen to? But if they can tell that this is something you're passionate about, something that you put time into, and that you've created this environment that says, hey, this is a good thing, you've earned that right to be heard, so that as you move into that content, they are going to listen. They are going to pay attention. That's why we do the fun things. That's why we do the goofy things, so that we have more credibility when we do the serious things, that people actually listen and pay attention to those things. So we'll dive into that main content. I know we have to have some time for Q&A, so I'm going to fly through a few more things. One more thing that I do think is super important is to practice. As I was just saying a moment ago, you can tell when we actually are taking this seriously. I know that there is certain content in the Bible that you'll probably choose to not talk about this in kids ministry. But did you know that there is nothing in the Bible that you can't learn from? Even the lessons that you're preparing for kids, did you know there's actually stuff in there for us as adults too? Yes, it's amazing, right? There's nothing I think that we just kind of grow up and we're like, hey, that part of the Bible doesn't apply to me anymore because now I turned 18 and I'm an adult and I don't have that anymore. No, but the reality is that we as leaders can remember that even as we're preparing these lessons, there is something in it for us as well. So we need to practice, take the time to learn what we're actually going to teach, but also practice to walk through the things that are happening. The transitions are so important. I think oftentimes we think about how we're going to play this one game, how we're going to sing this song, making sure we know the motions, but we don't think, well, how are we going to get from this to that? Because we're playing this game and we have this kiddie pool and it's full of water or shaving cream or whatever, and right after that we're going to have our team come up and we're going to do motions. Well, how are we going to do that? One of the things we also have to practice is how we walk from one thing to the next, how we make those things happen, that we walk through those transitions, that we practice every little aspect of what's happening. One more thing that I think is really important, you can write down this little, I don't know if it's a sentence or a formula. Routine equals security. Routine equals boredom. So you say, well, why does that matter for kids? You see, here's the thing. Kids need routine to have a level of comfort. If everything is mass chaos all the time and it's always in a different order, it's uncomfortable for them. But when they have like a system that they understand, I know that I go in this room and I know that I sit in this section and I know that we're probably going to do music and a song and then we're going to take an offering and then we're going to have a game and then we're going to have a message. Like when there's that routine, it gives them a level of comfort. But what we have to be careful of is it's great to have kind of a formula, a routine, a way that you do this. But we have to think about how can we do these things differently. Because if everything is exactly the same way day after day after day, it becomes boring. So have this routine, but you can change it up. For example, you might always take offering at the same place in your service. But one day you might be like, hey guys, today we're going to pass the plates, we're going to pass the buckets, whatever it is you have. The next time you might say, hey, today I need a boy leader and a girl leader. We're going to have one person on this side and they're going to act as our ushers. Maybe you're going to have one of those cool, have you guys seen the offering bots? That it's like a, what is that called, that special vacuum? Shop vac, and you give your money to the offering bot and it sucks it up and it's really cool, right? You can change things. You're still taking offering, right? Yeah, if you guys haven't seen this, yeah, you just basically take a shop vac and dress it up so it looks like a little person, turn it on, and they hand it its money and it sucks it all up. Well, now offering is really, you're still just taking offering, but that's pretty fun, right? So we can change the way we do things to make it still fun and make it still engaging. I want you guys to have some time for some questions, so just a couple other quick things I'm going to jump ahead to real quick. One thing that we love the chaotic mess that kids ministry can be. We love for it to be fun and goofy. We want this to be an engaging thing, but we also realize it's important to realize how you can control the chaos. So here's a few things that we like to do to control the chaos. Again, my goal is not to constantly be saying, hey, be quiet, sit down, fold your hands. Be quiet, sit down, fold your hands. That's not fun. But I do want you to be quiet and sit down and pay attention. So how do we kind of make that happen? Well, there's a few things that you can do that help you subconsciously make that happen. One thing is have a front line. Now, I know that when you go back to your kids' ministry, some of you might have chairs. You might have those pretty awesome easy risers made by Steve Knox just down the road, believe it or not. He's here in your Oregon area. Have you guys seen easy risers? Okay, they're really cool. They're these little benches that stack up against each other, so you immediately have like a full row that can seat hundreds of kids and push it back. Honestly, they're fantastic. They're amazing. But getting back to the real point, if you have a front line, it establishes a boundary, right? Nobody came in here and sat back here up against the wall. Why? Because it was pretty obvious. Somebody's going to be up there speaking. That would be really awkward if I chose that place to sit. You see, in our mind, subconsciously, we kind of know, okay, there's chairs. I'm probably supposed to sit in the chairs and face that way. If you don't have a chair, you chose to sit on that wall, right? Not on this wall. Now, if we have a front line, it gives us an area to do our thing, but it also gives kids kind of a boundary. If you don't have chairs, then you could put caution tape. You could use a rope. But the thing is, it helps you eliminate distractions. The moment kids come across that place, it's easy to say, hey guys, I'm so glad you're excited, but I need you to stay all the way back right there because they have extra things that are going to happen up here. I don't want you to distract other people. It gives them a great boundary, a great border. Also, aisles are super important. There's an aisle right here in the middle. Aisles do two things. They give people access to the front, and they give you access to the people. So if I have kids and they're hanging out here and they are not paying attention, if there is just one big line of chairs here, then the only possible way I can get that person's attention is to yell out and be really loud. But if I have an aisle, I can often just simply walk down the aisle, get a little bit closer, and make eye contact with that person that lets them know, I know what you're doing, and I need you to stop doing that and focus up here. And sometimes, just by simply walking down the aisle and making eye contact, I can totally take care of the discipline problem. So think about having a front line that establishes where you're going to be. There's also an aisle that gives you access to people. It also allows more volunteers to participate, so I don't just get to choose from the front row. Sound is super important. Microphones are great. It would have been easy to come into this room and say, I don't really need a microphone, I can just talk really loud. But a microphone allows me to change the inflection of my voice. I could actually be quieter, be a little bit more serious, and you can still hear what I'm doing. I could actually get the microphone close to my mouth and say, hey guys, back there in the back, I can see you. I need your focus right back up here. And I can be a little bit louder and more intentional without raising my voice and screaming to say, guys, knock it off. I need your attention up here. So use sound even when you think you don't, and also use music. Music is so good at setting an environment. So here we go. Here's a couple quick examples for you on when you hear music. I don't have to tell you what's coming next. The music tells you for me. So if I play something like this, is this time for our serious lesson? Probably not. We're probably going to do something fun and goofy. Hey, right now we're going to play a super fun game, but I need some volunteers. If you want to help out, raise your hand in the air. This music says that for me. Yeah, some of you guys are extra eager. I appreciate that. I could change the music, and we could do something a little bit more dangerous. I need some very brave people to help us out. Yes, some of you know. We could change the music again and maybe do something more mysterious. Today, I have a story. And now the kids are drawn in. Ooh, this is a mystery. Something special is going to happen. But I can also change the music, and just by changing the music tells you this is something more serious. This is something to pay attention to. The goofiness is the past. We've had some fun, but now it's time to focus. So think about how you use music. We often just kind of choose this royalty-free music. You can find it online, or you find a track and just get the accompaniment without the lyrics. But it can be so helpful for that audience control. It helps kids pay attention to the fact that, hey, instead of having to say, and sometimes of course we do, hey guys, we know we've had a lot of fun, but we're just going to bring it down a notch for right now. But often the music just does that for me. They hear the music and they know what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be crazy. This is energetic. It's a game. They're supposed to pay attention. This is slower. This is serious. So think about how you use music and how it can help you create the environment that you want to happen. Last couple things real quick. One is physical movement. I think it's important for us to remember that it is hard for anyone to be still. Right? It is hard. They used to say, hey, you get 1 minute of attention span for every year old you are. So like if you're 5, you have a 5-minute attention span. But the research said everybody maxes out at 12. Like even the best adults probably can't sit still and listen for more than 12 minutes. Now, the truth is that this research was the stuff we saw 10 years ago before we were constantly looking at screens. I'm guessing our attention span has not increased over the last 10 years. For kids, they might have time sitting still and paying attention. For adults who are up more than they thought they would be last night, they just might have a tough time staying awake right now, right? Yes. So the thing is, we want to find ways to change things up, so I'm not just saying we're going to sit still for an hour. And so when it comes to those things, there are several little things that you can do that are sometimes fun and silly and goofy that will help kind of create some attention. So I'll give you 2 fun things right now. One thing I don't like to do is just say, hey, I can tell we need a quick break. Let's stand and stretch. Because now there's no parameters to that, right? And so when I'm ready to have the control, it's hard to get the control back. But I could do something like this. Say, hey guys, I want to try something with you guys real quick. I need you to do this real important instruction. So if you guys would follow along, I want you to, as quietly as you can, stand to your feet. Go ahead, you can do it right now. Quietly as you can, stand to your feet. Now, this next part is important. I want you to turn and face somebody who is close to you. Look them directly in the eyes and do not say anything yet. In fact, there are some very important words. These are the words I want you to say. First, look them in the eye and say, no. I do not have a hamburger. Now extend your right hand and say, however, I do have a shake. Yeah, go ahead and shake their hand. Meet a new friend, and now you may have a seat. I need you guys to try one more thing. Try one more thing. Here we go. If you would, I want you to all lean this way. Excellent. Let's go ahead and lean the other way. Perfect. Lean backward. Lean forward. Stand up straight and tall. Yeah, they say you can always tell a good speaker by their ability to move an audience. So I'm glad you were all moved. But real quick, 2 things with that. It's silly. It makes you laugh. But you know what else really happened? I did give you just a moment to say, you know what, let's do something. Let's stand to our feet, sit back down, let's stretch out a little bit. But you can find ways to kind of do those in a way that still allows you to keep control. As we kind of finish off here, I want to give you guys just a moment for some quick questions. Again, I apologize. I know I tried to fly through some things and hope, hey, maybe I could take this one thing away. But I need to turn things back over to Mr. Bryan in just a couple of minutes. But real quick, does anybody have any questions? Yes, right over there.
Hi. So we have a lot of kids with sensory, auditory issues. And we have like 10 kids, and like half of them have that. How do you adapt your lessons to accommodate for something?
That's fantastic. So the question was, we have kids with sensory issues. So I think that your situation is unique. If you have 10 total kids and half of them have sensory issues, then quite honestly, I would probably revamp my whole thing to be targeted toward that, because half of your kids have sensory issues, right? Yeah. So if you're in a situation where you have 100 kids and 5 have sensory issues, then we kind of start saying, is there something we can provide? Can they wear, ear protectors? Does that help them sit a little bit still? Are there some hands-on things that they can do? Depending on the size of your church and your resources, you can say, hey, we're going to have a room, and these people are going to be able to be in here and then come later in the worship when the music is over. But I would say, from a practical standpoint, the best thing you can do, we always try to, as much as possible, and again, we all know how difficult it is to recruit volunteers, but if I can have a one-on-one volunteer for those kids, it's great. Maybe 1 and 2, because that way they're going to need a little extra attention. If they need some ear protectors or things like that, I would say in your situation, I would just, any music is going to be lighter music. You're going to have different activities and things like that. I think you always have to look at that individual situation, give them as much one-on-one attention as you can. Sometimes, like I said, it's a separate room and they come in after music, but I think ultimately you have to really look at those kids individually. And I know that was a short answer that we could expand on. We can talk more, but any other questions real quick? Way in the back, on the floor.
All your dad jokes you can steal?
A list of dad jokes. Yeah, I guess that is what they are these days, aren't they? You know what? I think we do, believe it or not, on our website. And honestly, again, there's two main things we do. The first biggest thing we do is we love to work with churches. We love to say, hey, can we come make your, VBS closing thing extra special? But we also do resources, because we know sometimes you're like, I just need my own dad jokes. And so I do think we have some comedy lists that are very much silly, fun things like that. We have a stack of our cards. Tisha probably has some. You can pick those up. You can go on our website, and if you search comedy lists, there's probably a book or pamphlet or a downloadable thing of questions that are hard to answer, right? Like, why is abbreviation such a long word? Things like that. So there's a lot of those type of things. Any other quick questions? I think we have time for one last question. Anyone? Down in front.
How do you deal with the decidedly non-participator? Like, they don't want to do anything.
Awesome. The question is, and I'm glad you said that, because in 1 minute or less I'll answer it. The question is, those people that say, I don't want to participate. First thing that I do is I make sure my leaders know what they're doing. Because here's the thing that's really frustrating for me is when you're a leader up front and there's leaders in the audience, if your leaders, again, going back to kind of what we said earlier, if my leaders know the motions and they act like this is fun and exciting and they're on their feet and they're participating, then it's more likely that those non-participators are going to participate. If, as a leader, the leader is kind of sitting there half singing the song, not doing any of the motions, then especially your older boys are going to look at that person and say, you know what, the adults don't think this is cool. I don't think this is cool. So the first thing is make sure your leaders understand you're always leading. Even when you're in the audience, when we're singing a song, if we want the kids to be this big, we got to be this big, right? We have to be as big as we can. Make sure your leaders are engaged. I also say, hey, you as a leader, I hope that I never have to walk back there and take care of that discipline issue, because there should be a leader close enough to recognize that first, so you don't always have to do that. So I think that's the first thing, is look at your leaders and say, are they setting the example that you want? And if not, make sure they are. The second thing is, I always try to find some older kids. I love the fact that we have a lot of youth on the stage, because that allows kind of some of those boys that are kind of getting to that age, and girls, that they're saying, I don't know if I fully want to participate. When they see older, cool kids doing this, they're more likely to do it. So I think that's the biggest thing, is try to figure out, how can I plug this in with somebody that they're going to think, hey, you know what, it is cool to do it because I see them doing it. And that's about the biggest thing. Beyond that, to say that those kids are often the target, right? If you're working with 2nd through 5th graders, then we're always thinking, how do we keep the 5th grade boys engaged? Because it works that same way too. If those older kids are engaged, then the 2nd graders are going to be engaged. And so, obviously that doesn't fully answer the question, but that's where I would start, to say, do the leaders know what they're doing? Are they engaged? Do they realize they're setting the example? We have to be bigger than we want them to be. And is there a way that we can give them more of that leadership?
Thanks for listening to this recording offered by the Oregon Ministry Network in Salem, Oregon. Our mission is to develop effective leaders and build healthy churches and ministries. Visit OregonAG.org to find additional resources and learn more about us.